Hey y'all, this is my latest article that I wrote on my Substack, and it's long. I don't have a lot of time to read it out so I can make video content. So thankfully, Substack has a feature where if you click on an article, there's a little play button at the top right corner, and you can listen to it be read by a weird AI voice, but still, at least it gets read to you. So if you haven't had time to read this, you could just sit back and take a listen. I apologize in advance that the AI pronounces some words weirdly, but hey, nothing I can do about that.
Change or die. Pluto in Aquarius, fixed sign stagnation, trauma, and the cost of refusing to evolve. Pluto in Aquarius is exposing the places where we keep calling stagnation stability, avoidance peace, and survival a personality. By SGC Astrology. Has Pluto in Aquarius gotten your attention yet? I hope so. This is not one of those quick transits that is here today and gone before you've even had time to fully understand what it means. Pluto is slow-moving. Pluto takes its time. Pluto does not rush through a sign just to sprinkle a little temporary intensity on your life and move on. Pluto applies pressure over time. That is why it is not subtle even when it seems to start that way. Pluto may whisper before it screams, but eventually, it makes the thing you have been avoiding almost impossible to ignore. And I think that is largely what people are underestimating about this transit. Pluto in Aquarius is not just about technology, AI, social media, friend groups, community, collective movements, systems, and all the other Aquarius keywords we can pull from an astrology book. Yes, those things matter. They matter a lot. We are watching technology rapidly reshape how people work, communicate, create, connect, detach, lie, learn, surveil, organize, and manipulate information. However, Pluto in Aquarius is also part of a much larger story. Pluto is finishing something. And astrologically, that's significant AF. Pluto is not moving like Mars, beloved. I want to slow this down because I think part of the reason people underestimate outer planet transits is because we sometimes talk about them with the same level of casualness we use for faster transits. This is not Mars spending 6 to 8 weeks somewhere and making everybody irritated, motivated, horny, combative, or ready to argue in a group chat. This is not Mercury retrograde becoming the scapegoat for communication problems some people had long before Mercury had anything to do with it. Pluto takes approximately 248 years to move through the zodiac. So when we talk about Pluto changing signs or Pluto moving through a modality, we are talking about eras. We are talking about generations. We are talking about the kinds of shifts most people understand better in hindsight because when you are living inside of them, it often just feels like life is getting weird, heavy, intense, revealing, unstable, and a little bit, what in the entire hell is happening? Nobody alive today experienced Pluto in Taurus. Some people from the Pluto in Leo generation are still here. My mother was part of that generation. But even that gives us a very specific kind of generational conversation because Pluto is not rushing. Pluto is not flitting through signs. Pluto takes its time because Pluto is not changing your outfit. Pluto is excavating the basement, the bones, the bodies, the secrets, the survival strategies, the systems, and everything people thought they could bury forever. So when I say Pluto is finishing its fixed sign journey, I need that to really stick. This transit is not small. This transit is not random. This transit is not just Aquarius means technology, plus Pluto is revolution equals technological revolution, with nothing but the argument against or for AI front and center. Pluto has moved through Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and now Aquarius. Those are the fixed signs. If you understand astrology structurally, not just aesthetically, you already know fixed energy is what we stabilize around. It is what we preserve. It is what we hold on to. It is what we build our lives around and say, this is solid. This is mine. This is who I am. This is what I value. This is what I love. This is what I refuse to change. At its highest expression, fixed energy is beautiful. It is loyalty. It is devotion. It is consistency. It is endurance. It is the ability to sustain something long enough for it to become tangible and sturdy. We need fixed energy. Without it, everything would be a spark with no candle, an idea with no structure, a feeling with no follow-through. The shadow is where things get tricky. The shadow of fixed energy is stagnation. It is being so loyal to an old version of yourself that you become disloyal to your own growth. It is calling something stability because you are used to it, even though it has not actually been good for you in years. It is mistaking pride for dignity. It is mistaking control for peace. It is mistaking avoidance for maturity. It is saying, "This is just how I am," when what you really mean is, "I have no intention of doing the work required to become someone else." That is why I keep saying this transit gives change or die energy. And no, before somebody starts accusing me of doom and gloom, I do not mean literal death. I mean ego death, pattern death, identity death, survival mechanism death. The death of the version of you that cannot come into the future unchanged because the future you keep saying you want cannot be built by the same version of you that keeps choosing the same patterns. That is Pluto. Pluto does not preserve what is already decaying just because you are emotionally attached to it. The fixed signs tell a story. One of the ways I think through astrology is in order. I do it with the zodiac as a whole, and I do it within elements and modalities too. If I'm talking about earth signs, I'm thinking Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. If I'm talking about the zodiac, I'm thinking Aries through Pisces. So when I think about fixed signs, I'm not just throwing Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius into a bag and shaking them up like astrological trail mix. There's a story there. Taurus comes first. Taurus is value. Taurus is survival. Taurus is the body, the land, food, money, possessions, stability, self-worth, the senses, and the tangible things we can touch, hold, taste, smell, build, preserve, and rely on. Taurus is where life starts asking, what do I have? What do I need? What is mine? What is worth keeping? What makes me feel safe enough to exist in a body? Then comes Leo. After Taurus establishes value and stability, Leo says, okay, now what do I create with that? Leo is heart, creativity, children, joy, romance, pleasure, self-expression, pride, performance, legacy, and the ability to pour life into something that carries your essence. Leo is not just appreciation. Leo is the kind of love that wants to shine, create, protect, and pass something on. Leo is what we give life to because it comes from the heart. It is unconditional love. Then comes Scorpio, and Scorpio is where life teaches us that nothing stays untouched forever. Scorpio is intimacy, death, rebirth, trauma, betrayal, shared resources, inheritance, power, secrets, grief, psychology, transformation, and the stuff people do not want to discuss until life forces the conversation. Scorpio asks, what happens when what you value and what you love gets entangled with other people, other people's pain, other people's money, other people's bodies, other people's secrets, other people's power, and your own shadow? Then we arrive at Aquarius. Aquarius zooms out. Aquarius is the collective, society, networks, friendship, technology, systems, movements, humanity, the future, and the way individual choices eventually become collective realities. Aquarius asks, what did all of that build? What kind of society came from those values? What kind of future came from those identities? What kind of systems came from those survival strategies? What happens when everybody's private dysfunction becomes public architecture? That is why Pluto in Aquarius feels so massive to me. It is not only transforming Aquarius themes. It is looking at the whole fixed sign story and asking what can survive the future. What did we value? What did we create? What did we merge with? What did we refuse to release? What systems were built from all of that? And are those systems alive, or are they just old? Old does not automatically mean wise. Sometimes old just means nobody had the courage, energy, support, money, awareness, or collective will to change things yet. Pluto retrograde is the review. Pluto is already retrograde in Aquarius as I'm writing this. Pluto stationed retrograde on May 6, 2026, at about 5 degrees and 30 minutes of Aquarius. It will station direct around October 15th or 16, depending on where you are in the world, at about 3 degrees and 4 minutes of Aquarius. So Pluto is not leaving Aquarius. It is not changing its mind. It is going back over early Aquarius territory it has already touched. That gives this period a very specific feeling. Retrogrades are not punishments. They are reviews. They are returns. They are the planetary version of, run that back because I don't think you actually dealt with what you saw the first time. Pluto retrograde feels less like brand new information and more like being forced to sit with what you already know. That can be uncomfortable because awareness gives people a little dopamine hit sometimes. People love realizing things. People love naming things. People love saying, "Oh my God, that's my trauma response," or "That's my attachment style," or "That's my shadow," or "That's my nervous system." And listen, I'm not making fun of awareness. Awareness matters. Awareness is still not transformation. Knowing the name of the wound is not the same thing as healing the wound. Being able to explain your trauma is not the same thing as changing the behaviors that came from it. Being able to identify a pattern is not the same thing as interrupting it. Sometimes people are not healing. They are just becoming fluent in the language of their own dysfunction. And baby, Pluto does not care how well you can explain the mess if you are still choosing to live in it. That is what this retrograde is asking. What have we become aware of since Pluto first dipped into Aquarius that we still have not actually changed? Collectively, think about what has already come up. Artificial intelligence moved from being a background conversation to something reshaping work, creativity, education, dating, misinformation, and reality itself. Social media keeps showing us how connected and lonely people can be at the same time. People are talking more openly about family estrangement, emotionally immature parents, narcissistic dynamics, collective trauma, performative healing, therapy speak being weaponized, and the difference between having language for healing and actually doing the work. We are also seeing institutions lose credibility. People are questioning systems they used to trust, or at least systems they were told to trust. The United States just came through its Pluto return in Capricorn, and now here we are with Pluto in Aquarius while this country is sitting in its 250th anniversary year, still arguing over what it is, who it serves, who it protects, who it excludes, what it values, and what future it is actually building. That is not random at all to me. And for my human design folks, yes, I do think the 2027 conversation lives in the background of this too. I am not making that the center of this article, but when you look at how many systems are showing signs of strain, how many old structures are crumbling, and how many people are sensing that the way we have been living cannot simply continue as is, it all rhymes. Pluto in Aquarius is not just asking whether you personally want to heal. It is asking what happens when enough people do not. The part one cannot unsee. This transit became deeply personal for me because I have been watching certain patterns play out in real time with people I know. Not hypothetical people. Not strangers on the internet. People close enough for me to observe over the years. People I have loved. People I have had compassion for. People whose pain I understand enough to know they did not become this way out of nowhere. Still, the pattern is the pattern. I know a pair of siblings born 3 years and 3 days apart. I am not naming them out of respect, and I am not writing this to drag anyone for sport. I am using them as real-life case studies because astrology always becomes clearer when you can see it moving through actual people, actual behavior, actual choices, and actual consequences. Both survived severe trauma growing up. Both have heavy fixed sign energy in their charts. Both are Scorpio risings. Both have strong Leo placements. One has a Taurus moon, Taurus Mars, Taurus South Node, Leo Sun, Leo Mercury, and Scorpio North Node. The other has a Leo Sun, Leo Mars, Mercury retrograde in Leo, an Aquarius moon, and Taurus ruling the 7th house of the chart. So when I talk about fixed sign stagnation, I'm not just sitting here coming up with fun word associations. I have watched heavy fixed energy try to survive Pluto's pressure in real life, and phew. Let's stay there for a second. This is not about saying fixed signs are bad. I do not do lazy astrology like that. Fixed energy can be loyal, powerful, creative, protective, deeply loving, and incredibly enduring. If fixed energy gets organized around trauma, pride, control, avoidance, resentment, or fear, though, it can become a fortress with no windows. And then the person inside calls that safety. One of these siblings once said they could not face their trauma because they believed it would kill them. I understood what they meant. I really did. Healing can feel like death because in a way it is. Not physical death, but the death of the version of you that survived by splitting off, shutting down, dissociating, suppressing, over-controlling, over-performing, underfeeling, or pretending you were fine because being honest about how not fine you were would have overwhelmed the whole system. I have empathy for that. I also know not dealing with it is still doing something. It's just not doing something healthy. This person thinks the trauma is not impacting them because they are not facing it head-on. In their mind, if they do not turn around and look at it, it cannot touch them. From where I'm standing, it is not gone. It is behind them like a massive dam full of everything they refuse to process, and they do not realize how much energy it takes to hold that dam up every single day. They are not free from it. They are employed by it. Every trigger, every nightmare, every conflict, every chaotic situation, every moment where life presses on that wound, that shit is trying to come up and out. And instead of letting it come up so it can be processed, grieved, prayed over, talked through, screamed about, cried out, written down, moved through, or whatever it needs to be, they shove it back down and call that survival. Now, before somebody gets in my comments acting like I said healing is easy, I did not. Healing is not easy. I did not levitate out of my mother's vagina healed, Buddha, and fully self-actualized. I had to go through my own fires. I had to face my own mess. I had to grow through things I would have preferred to skip. I have had versions of myself die so other versions could live, and I am sure there will be more because that is life. So no, I am not saying this from a spiritual high horse. I am saying it from experience. At some point, survival cannot be anyone's entire personality. Chaos and calm can be the same avoidance wearing different outfits. What fascinates me about these two siblings is that on the surface, they do not express the stuck patterns the same way. One looks more like chaos, constant movement, constant crisis, constant overwhelm. A life that seems to be held together with prayers, duct tape, a paperclip, and somebody else's patience. Their inner world is not hidden. It is all over the outer life. And that is not me being cruel. That is me being observant. When someone's business, home, relationships, sleep, emotional regulation, and daily functioning are all reflecting the same unprocessed pain, at what point do we stop pretending the inner world is private? Their life is telling on it. The other sibling looks calmer from the outside, but that calm is not always peace. Sometimes it is shut down. Sometimes it is stonewalling. Sometimes it is emotional evacuation. Sometimes their "I have nothing to say" is not maturity. Sometimes their "okay" is not acceptance. Their walking away from accountability is never really about peacekeeping for all. It's about maintaining the stagnant status quo for self. Avoidance does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like going silent. Sometimes it looks like going back to a video game, a phone, a hobby, a distraction, or a routine like nothing happened. Sometimes it looks like sending a random funny video to someone you haven't spoken to in weeks while a whole elephant is sitting in the middle of the text thread wearing tap shoes. And if you are the person trying to have a real conversation, you start feeling like you are losing your mind because you are not asking for perfection. You are asking for participation. You are asking the person to come into the room emotionally and actually engage with the impact of their behavior. That should not be an impossible request. For some people, accountability feels like annihilation. You can say, "This behavior hurt me," and they hear, "You are a bad person." You can say, "I need you to show up differently," and they hear, "You are irredeemable." You can say, "This pattern cannot continue," and suddenly you are the villain because you had the nerve to name the pattern. That is maddening. It is also very Pluto. Pluto reveals what is underneath the reaction. The issue is not just the argument. The issue is the shame system under the argument, the avoidance under the shame, the trauma under the avoidance, and the identity built around never having to fully face the original wound. That is where the work lives. That is exactly where some people refuse to go. Bad behavior, bad person, and the space between. I am not interested in flattening people into good or bad, like we are 5 years old and still need morality explained with cartoon villains. Humans are complicated. All of us are capable of bad behavior. I do not care how spiritual, healed, therapized, educated, intuitive, saved, sanctified, or moisturized you are. You are capable of hurting people. You are capable of being selfish. You are capable of being wrong. You are capable of reacting from a wound. You are capable of doing something you later need to repair. Bad behavior does not automatically make someone a bad person. If someone keeps bringing the same harmful behavior to your attention and you keep refusing to examine it, correct it, repair it, or even have an honest conversation about it, the behavior eventually stops looking like an accident. At some point, repeated behavior becomes character. At some point, your actions become your resume. That is precisely where Pluto stops playing with people. Pluto is not impressed by your self-image if your behavior keeps producing harm. Pluto is not impressed by the fact that you think you are a good person if the people around you are starving for care, accountability, presence, or reciprocity. Pluto wants to know what your life is actually producing. What are your relationships experiencing? What are your children experiencing? What is your home experiencing? What is your body experiencing? What is your work experiencing? What are people constantly having to compensate for because you will not grow? That is the question. Not whether you can explain why you are this way. What are you doing with the fact that you know? Love is participation. This is another place where Pluto in Aquarius gets us clear because none of us exists in isolation. I know people love to say, I didn't mean to hurt you, and sometimes that is true. Sometimes people really do cause harm without intending to. I can give grace for that. We are human. We are clumsy. We are wounded. We are learning. But intention is not the only thing that matters. Impact matters too. And sometimes impact is much louder on the receiving end than intention ever was on the giving end. You may not have intended to hurt somebody, but if your behavior keeps hurting them and they keep telling you that, at what point do you stop hiding behind what you meant and start dealing with what you are actually doing? That is clearly what I think some people want to skip. Because when someone refuses to grow, they are not the only person paying for that refusal. The people around them pay too. The partners, the children, the friends, the family members, the coworkers, the people who keep trying to love them, support them, understand them, accommodate them, explain things to them, forgive them, and make room for the version of them they keep promising is coming. The stubbornness becomes communal. The stagnation becomes everybody's problem. And that is deeply unfair. If you are bleeding all over people and they tell you, hey, you're bleeding on me, the loving response is not to argue about whether you meant to bleed. The loving response is to tend to the wound. That is what I mean when I say love is participation. Love is not just attachment. Love is not just history. Love is not just saying, I love you. Love is not simply being used to someone's presence or enjoying what they provide. Love has to care about impact. Love has to care about repair. Love has to care about whether the people around us are constantly absorbing the cost of our refusal to heal. If we love people, we care about how we affect them. If we love people, we care when our patterns are hurting them. If we love people, we do not keep demanding endless grace while offering little to no transformation. And if we don't care how we impact the people we claim to love, then we have to ask a hard question. Is that love? Or is that attachment with mediocre PR? That is the kind of question Pluto asks. Not because Pluto is trying to shame anybody, but because Pluto has no interest in preserving stories that are not backed up by behavior. The difference between struggling and refusing. I know somebody is going to try to turn this into, well, everybody struggles, so let's go ahead and handle that before it starts tap dancing in somebody's mind and dances into the comments. Yes. Everybody struggles. That is not what I am talking about. There is a difference between someone struggling and someone refusing. There is a difference between someone saying, I know this is a pattern and I am actively working on it, and someone saying, this is just how I am, while everybody around them keeps paying the bill for that refusal. There is a difference between needing grace and using grace as a storage unit for stagnation. There is a difference between falling short while growing and setting up camp in the shortfall while expecting everyone else to decorate around you. That is what I am talking about. Some people do not want healing. They want relief from consequences. They want people to stop being affected by their behavior without actually changing the behavior. They want the relationship but not the responsibility. The love but not the accountability. The home but not the labor. The children but not the presence. The partnership but not the participation. And if you call that out, suddenly you are mean. You are harsh. You are negative. You are doing too much. You are attacking. Baby, no. Sometimes accountability just feels like an attack to the part of you that was planning to stay the same. That does not make it an attack. Why fixed signs are feeling this so strongly? If you have strong fixed sign placements, Pluto in Aquarius is going to be activating something in your chart by conjunction, opposition, or square at some point during this long transit. If you have Aquarius placements, Pluto will form conjunctions to them over time. Remember, a conjunction is anything but casual. Pluto sitting on a planet or point in your chart brings the energy right into the room with that part of you. It merges. It intensifies. Transforms from the inside. This can feel like identity reconstruction, psychological excavation, and a slow stripping away of what no longer belongs to the person you are becoming. If you have Leo placements, Pluto will oppose them. Oppositions often come through relationships, mirrors, confrontations, projections, and outside circumstances. They are calls for balance. The outside world starts reflecting something back to you that you may not have wanted to see. With Leo, this can hit identity, pride, creativity, visibility, children, romance, self-expression, and the need to be seen. If you have Taurus or Scorpio placements, Pluto will square them. Squares create friction. They agitate. They pressure. They make stagnation uncomfortable enough that movement becomes harder to avoid. With Taurus, the pressure may hit security, money, the body, values, and comfort. With Scorpio, the pressure may hit intimacy, trauma, power, control, fear, shared resources, grief, and emotional survival strategies. This is why change or die feels especially potent for fixed placements. Fixed signs do not usually move because someone sent them a helpful inspirational quote. Fixed energy often moves when the discomfort of staying the same becomes stronger than the fear of changing. And Pluto knows exactly how to apply that kind of pressure. What Pluto can mean for your fixed planets. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Sun, something about your identity, vitality, purpose, confidence, and sense of self is being transformed from the inside out. This can feel like the old version of you is no longer available, but the new version is not fully formed yet. That in-between space can be uncomfortable because the Sun wants to know itself, but Pluto says, first, let's remove who you became to survive, perform, please, protect, or control. If Pluto is opposing your Sun, identity transformation may arrive through other people, relationships, opposition, confrontation, or circumstances that force you to see yourself more clearly. This is where projection can get loud AF. You may feel like people are challenging who you are, but the deeper question is whether they are challenging the false structures around who you thought you had to be. If Pluto is squaring your Sun, pressure builds around identity, purpose, ego, confidence, and self-expression. A square will not always let you bypass discomfort. It creates friction, and friction creates heat. If you have been trying to keep living as a version of yourself that no longer has life in it, Pluto square the Sun can make that impossible to ignore. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Moon, the emotional body is being excavated. The Moon is your needs, instincts, emotional memory, home life, private self, mothering patterns, safety needs, and inner world. Pluto conjunct the Moon can bring buried feelings to the surface and force you to stop calling emotional familiarity safety. If your nervous system learned chaos is home, Pluto may make that painfully clear. If Pluto is opposing your Moon, emotional triggers may come through relationships, family dynamics, home situations, or outside circumstances that make your inner world harder to avoid. The Moon wants comfort, but Pluto wants truth. So the question becomes, is this actually nurturing me, or is it just what I know? If Pluto is squaring your Moon, emotional discomfort becomes difficult to suppress. This can expose where you have been overfunctioning, underfeeling, clinging, avoiding, caregiving, controlling, or calling dysfunction normal because it is familiar. Pluto square the Moon can make you change how you create safety within yourself. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Mercury, your mind deepens. Mercury is communication, perception, thought patterns, speech, learning, siblings, and how you process information. Pluto conjunct Mercury can make the mind investigative, intense, psychologically sharp, or obsessive. It can also expose where your thinking has been shaped by fear, secrecy, control, or old survival logic. If Pluto is opposing your Mercury, conversations with others may become mirrors. People may challenge your thinking, your words, your assumptions, or your communication patterns. If you are willing to listen, this can be powerful. If you turn every challenge into a power struggle, it can get ugly fast. If Pluto is squaring your Mercury, your thought patterns are being pressured to change. This can bring mental intensity, hard conversations, obsessive thinking, or the need to confront where your words and your truth are not aligned. If you have been using communication to dodge accountability, manipulate the narrative, or make people chase you for basic clarity, this transit is not likely to let that slide. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Venus, love, values, money, beauty, pleasure, attraction, self-worth, and relationship patterns are being transformed. Venus asks what we value and how we connect. Pluto asks whether those values and connections are rooted in truth or attachment. This can bring deep healing, intense relationships, financial transformation, or the death of old patterns around love and worth. If Pluto is opposing your Venus, relationships may mirror power dynamics, control, jealousy, resentment, attachment, desire, and self-worth. This does not automatically mean a relationship ends, but superficial relating becomes harder to maintain. Pluto opposing Venus asks whether love is actually love, or whether it is dependency, possession, fear, chemistry, convenience, or history wearing love's clothes. If Pluto is squaring your Venus, discomfort in love, money, values, or pleasure forces reassessment. This can expose where you have settled, overgiven, underreceived, confused chemistry with compatibility, or confused attention with love. Pluto square Venus can make it clear what you can no longer afford emotionally, spiritually, or financially. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Mars, desire, anger, motivation, conflict style, sexuality, and action patterns intensify. Mars is how we move, pursue, fight, assert, and protect. Pluto conjunct Mars can be powerful, but it demands honesty about how you use power. Are you moving with purpose or reacting from a wound? Are you asserting yourself or trying to dominate because vulnerability feels too dangerous? If Pluto is opposing your Mars, conflict with others may highlight how you handle anger, assertion, competition, and control. Other people may seem like the problem, but oppositions often show us what we have disowned. The question becomes whether you are fighting for growth or fighting because accountability feels like an attack. If Pluto is squaring your Mars, frustration builds until something has to change. This can feel like pressure, blocked action, rage, exhaustion, or conflict. It asks whether your current direction is aligned. Fixed Mars energy can keep moving in the same direction even when the direction is wrong, then act confused when the wall refuses to move. Pluto square Mars will ask whether your will is serving your evolution or just defending your ego. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Jupiter, your beliefs, worldview, faith, growth path, education, and sense of meaning are being transformed. Jupiter expands and Pluto intensifies. This can deepen wisdom, but it can also expose belief systems rooted in arrogance, denial, spiritual bypassing, or false hope. If Pluto is opposing your Jupiter, outside events may challenge what you believe, teach, trust, or assume to be morally clear. This can create ideological tension. Can also mature your faith if you are willing to let truth be bigger than comfort. If Pluto is squaring your Jupiter, growth requires letting go of inflated or outdated beliefs. This can be humbling. It can show where optimism became denial, where confidence became arrogance, or where belief became another way to avoid reality. Pluto square Jupiter asks for deeper wisdom, not louder certainty. If Pluto is making a conjunction to your Saturn, your structures, responsibilities, fears, commitments, boundaries, and long-term foundations are being rebuilt. Saturn is what we build over time. Pluto tests whether the foundation can survive pressure. This can be serious energy, but it can also make you stronger than you have ever been if you are willing to rebuild honestly. If Pluto is opposing your Saturn, external pressures may test your boundaries, commitments, responsibilities, authority issues, or life structures. This can feel like reality confronting you through other people or circumstances. The lesson is not to collapse under pressure, but to become more honest about what is and is not sustainable. If Pluto is squaring your Saturn, life may force you to confront structures that are no longer sound. This can involve work, family, aging, responsibility, fear, authority, obligations, or commitments that feel heavy because they were built on something that can no longer hold. Pluto is not destroying what is strong. It is exposing what cannot carry the weight anymore. Look at the houses too. Even if you do not have planets in fixed signs, you still have fixed houses. Everybody has a house ruled by Taurus, a house ruled by Leo, a house ruled by Scorpio, and a house ruled by Aquarius. Everybody has areas of life where fixed energy operates. Look at the house ruled by Taurus in your chart and also your second house. What are you clinging to because it feels safe? What values need to evolve? What are you afraid to lose? Where are you confusing comfort with alignment? Where are you preserving something simply because you know how to survive inside of it? Look at the house ruled by Leo in your chart and also your fifth house. Where are pride and validation involved? Where are you struggling to express yourself authentically? Where are you confusing attention with love? Where is your creativity asking for rebirth? Where have you become attached to being seen a certain way? Look at the house ruled by Scorpio in your chart and also your 8th house. What are you refusing to confront emotionally? What inherited patterns are still operating your life from behind the scenes? What pain are you holding on to because at least it is familiar? Where are power, intimacy, debt, grief, shared resources, trauma, or control asking for transformation? Look at the house ruled by Aquarius in your chart and also your 11th house. What future are you actually building? What communities are you attached to? What systems are collapsing? What collective patterns are you unconsciously participating in? Where are you being asked to think beyond personal comfort and consider the larger pattern? Pluto in Aquarius is collective, yes. And the collective always finds a doorway through the personal. Uranus in Gemini, Saturn in Aries, and the noise around the transformation. Now, Pluto is the focus of this article, but it is not the only thing happening. Uranus is now in Gemini, and that alone is enough to make me want to stare into the camera like I'm on The Office. Gemini is communication, information, media, messaging, language, transportation, perception, and the way ideas move. Uranus disrupts, awakens, shocks, liberates, and electrifies. Put Uranus in Gemini while Pluto is in Aquarius, and suddenly the air signs are not just having thoughts. The air signs are building realities with those thoughts, disrupting realities with those thoughts, and sometimes completely losing the plot with those thoughts. So when we talk about misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, AI, media manipulation, communication breakdowns, technological acceleration, and people not knowing what is real anymore, I am not shocked. I don't say that casually either. I did a piece before on Uranus and Gemini and what has happened historically when Uranus was there, and we do not need to pretend we are not already seeing echoes. We are in a time where information itself is unstable, and when information is unstable, perception becomes a battlefield. Saturn in Aries adds another layer because Aries is identity, action, assertion, combat, selfhood, and the courage to begin. Saturn in Aries can ask us to mature in how we act, how we fight, how we define ourselves, and how we take responsibility for the consequences of our will. Since Saturn in Aries can sextile Pluto in Aquarius at different points, there is opportunity there. It is not all doom and gloom. There is a chance to build new courage, new discipline, new social structures, and new ways of acting in alignment with the future. Opportunity does not mean ease. It means there is a door. You still have to walk through it. What Pluto actually wants. I do not think Pluto wants perfection. I think Pluto wants honesty. Real honesty. The kind of honesty that says, this pattern is no longer sustainable. The kind that says, this behavior is harming me and other people. The kind that says, I cannot keep calling this peace when it is really avoidance. The kind that says, I cannot keep calling this love when there is no participation. The kind that says, I cannot build a future on top of the same coping mechanisms that kept me alive but never actually let me live. That is the Pluto-themed work. Not aesthetic healing. Not performance. Not language. Not a TikTok vocabulary list of therapy terms. Actual participation in transformation. And yes, transformation hurts. It hurts to realize something you loved cannot come with you in its current form. It hurts to realize someone you love may choose stagnation over accountability. It hurts to realize you cannot save people by pouring more love into them. It hurts to grieve potential. It hurts to stop waiting for the version of someone you kept hoping would show up. Stagnation hurts too. The difference is one pain moves you somewhere, and the other keeps charging interest while asking everyone around it to help pay the bill. If you want to work with this personally, if you want to understand how Pluto in Aquarius is personally impacting your chart, especially if you have fixed sign placements or if you already know life has been applying pressure in a way you can no longer ignore, I am opening space for a small number of one-on-one clients. Right now, I am only taking clients who want to work together for at least 3 months, starting at $350 per month. Installment options are available. This journey includes astrology and human design, so we are not just looking at what is happening in your chart. We are also looking at how you are designed to move through life, make decisions, work with your energy, understand your patterns, and stop trying to force yourself through transformation in ways that were never aligned for you in the first place. This is not for quick curiosity readings. This is for people who want to understand their chart, track the timing, work with the patterns, and actually engage the process instead of just collecting information. Astrology is not supposed to be something you read, nod at, and then keep living exactly the same way. Not if you are working with me. If you feel called to explore the journey, you can schedule a 3-month journey alignment call for a consultation and start your journey here. https://henley.com/illy-spiritual gangsta certified /3-month-journey-alignment-call. Don't miss the blessings of this long transit. I think one of the biggest collective themes we are going to keep seeing under Pluto in Aquarius is the collapse of identities built entirely around survival. People are tired. Spiritually tired. Emotionally tired. Relationally tired. Nervous system tired. Tired of performing wellness while being unwell. Tired of pretending the family system is fine. Tired of calling dysfunction loyalty. Tired of acting like survival mode is a personality. Tired of pouring into people, places, jobs, platforms, systems, and relationships that keep taking without transforming. Some people are going to evolve because of that exhaustion. Other people are going to double down. Not everybody chooses transformation. Some people choose stagnation until stagnation itself becomes unbearable, and sometimes even then, they would rather blame the world than confront themselves honestly. That is the cautionary tale here. It's not fixed signs bad. It's not traumatized people bad. It's not Aquarius bad. And definitely not Pluto scary. This cautionary tale is what happens when pain hardens into identity, and someone mistakes emotional immobility for strength. Eventually, repeated behavior becomes structure, structure becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny if left unexamined long enough. That is what Pluto exposes. So as Pluto retrogrades through Aquarius, I think the question is simple. Not easy. Simple. What have you become aware of that you still have not actually changed? Whatever that is, I would not assume it is going away just because you got tired of looking at it. Pluto is patient. And baby Pluto has time. I love you. Today's vibe of the day is Bag Lady by Erykah Badu because the whole message really is that simple. You cannot keep carrying everything you refuse to unpack and still expect to move freely into the future. At some point, the bags are not proof of what you survived. They are the weight keeping you from truly living.